And we are live.
Well, hello, world
Hello.
stage.
Shalom, shalom.
It's just me and the candy corn. Welcome.
Back.
Come in. Make yourself at home.
Out of curiosity, do you ever get like a bag of candy corn in like April or June, or is
Never.
it just a,
Never.
It's
Nope.
strictly seasonal.
Candy corn is a seasonal snack
Mm.
to be eaten not before September 1st.
Ah,
I feel like if you're getting candy corn in April, it's like last year's corn and it's going to be really hard.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is it ever soft? Is it ever
Yes,
not hard?
they're soft right now. It's soft like your noggin.
Oh.
So good. Look at this.
yeah, the
Very
pumpkins are the
crunchy.
softest.
Oh, look at that.
My blood sugar levels are just rising watching you eat that.
Yours is not the only one. I'll develop a nervous tick. I mean, occasionally, but I mean, I don't know if it's going to manifest itself while we're on the call today. I'm sure.
Sean, not candy corn again. Candy corn still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still eating the candy corn.
Yeah. The candy corn season ends on December 1st. Everyone knows that.
Amy, this is not a matzo ball soup. This is a Russian meatball soup
Which
with
is
dill.
basically matzo ball soup with dill.
And there's no matzah in there at all. Zero matzah. It's just potatoes and chicken meatballs and dill.
Chicken
So,
meatballs?
matzo thing.
No
Ground
thanks.
chicken.
Pass.
Ground chicken with rice.
Chicken should not be used for meatballs. Sorry.
Of course.
Nope. Mm-mm.
Listen, in Russia, you make meatballs out of whatever you get.
Just stop right there. Stop right there. I don't want to know what else you make
We have
meatballs
one
out of in
chicken.
Russia.
And one potato.
All
for
I
the
know is I've
entire
been to
village.
Russia 4 times, and that was 3 times too many. That's enough. Big
Right.
times.
Time.
Did you have this
Expensive.
when you were in Russia? Did you have a soup with dill in it?
Blocked it all out. Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Blocked it all out. I mean, Russia, 2 trips for one kid. Russia, 2 trips for another. Still
Right.
thinking I'm going to take him back. Still
Right.
thinking. Very close.
Still no.
Still undecided.
chicken-
Still
no
undecided.
Chicken meatball soup.
No. All good. So how many people we got on the call today? What we got?
They are rolling. So we've got Australia, New Zealand, and London seem to be the farthest places so far.
Natalie, fantastic. Yes.
Mary
Just
Lou.
spoke to
More
Natalie
from
this week.
London.
Lana, always a pleasure. Metro Atlanta, Georgia. Lana's going to have a fantastic Thanksgiving this year. I tell you, I salivate late at night looking through her site. So good. So good. Is that too
Any
much?
specific recipes?
No, don't want to call anyone out here, but it's pretty good. They're all awesome.
Oh, Carrie
They're awesome.
Anderson's here. We know her.
Do we know a Carrie Anderson? Sorry, no. I'm not placing it.
In
Right.
Minnesota,
Mm.
we've got one.
Minnesota.
Mhm.
California. Yes.
Nice.
Hi, Natalie.
Listen, I'm gonna pass one by you
That's
too.
what I'm
The
excited
winner.
about.
Yeah, there's
Greetings
a few
from
from
sunny LA.
California.
Yeah.
We've got San Diego, LA. I haven't seen anyone representing NorCal yet, but
Well, that's because they're smart.
we got a Bay Area. And Germany.
Oh,
Welcome,
Germany.
welcome.
They probably had the soup.
Oh no. We have Connie from
Right.
San Diego. Hello, Connie. Congratulations. Welcome to the best weather in the world. Hopefully you've been a long time native here. Good times. It briefly dropped below 80 yesterday. Had to get a sweater. Don't recommend that. But fortunately it recovered a little bit. So should have a good weather for Thanksgiving as always.
Sunny, hot, warm.
Mhm.
Yeah, no snow.
Second fall, as we call it. It's fine.
Australia. Lots of Australians here today.
Mhm.
Lori in Chicago, where the Tastemaker conference is going to be. We were all just talking about that.
Or we're all
We're all
gonna
going to
be-
be a tastemaker in March.
Yes.
Mhm. Gonna be a good time.
Anyone
You're
got
gonna get to
tickets to
see
the
us
tastemaker?
from a social distance.
Yeah, there will be limos involved. I mean, I've said too much already.
You've said enough.
I really
enough?
hope that our senior sponsorship table includes potato soup. Like you could be giving out
Instant.
quarts of the stuff.
No,
There will
you know,
be
freeze dried.
potatoes
We can do
Quart.
freeze
at the
dried.
table.
Quart
You
of
can do
soup.
freeze dried potato soup.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
I mean, It's still going to be cold the first week of March.
You know, I haven't done the
True.
research. Maybe there's a good Russian restaurant that we could go to in Chicago to continue with
it
the
is Chicago.
Tastemaker Conference tradition of taking everybody to a Russian restaurant.
I'm in.
Or we just bring a freezer and do frozen soup like they're suggesting. That's a great option too.
Carrie's
Very
in.
practical.
Carrie got to experience this last year. Oh no, 2 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the
Last
Tastemaker
year
workshop.
doesn't count. So
Yeah, we just
technically a
delete
year ago.
delete that
Yeah.
last year. And hey, should we talk about some SEO stuff?
Let's
No.
start.
Yeah,
no?
we should.
No.
We should probably move on because this is the 16th episode of SEO.
Thanks for
Publishing.
coming, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. So today, okay, we'll actually get into it. We're going to talk about Yoast SEO, the benefits, the not so many benefits, and clarifying a lot of things. You guys had some great questions upon registering. So as always, we're with the wonderful experts, Andrew Wilder, Arsen Rabinovich, and Casey Markey. We're going to have Q&A at the end, so please feel free to drop any and all of your questions in the Q&A box. If you put them in the chat, most likely they may get missed. So I highly recommend if you hover over the black Zoom box at the bottom, it says Q&A, click on that. You can put in a question anytime throughout the webinar. At the end, we will address them. If we don't get to all of them, the blog post that we publish a week after this airs, we answer all of the questions. So even if we don't get to it in the live Q&A, if you have a question, put it in there because they will answer it and it's amazing. You're welcome. All right,
Maybe.
cool. Arsen.
Hi.
Hi. Let's talk about what Yoast SEO is. What is it?
It's a plugin that you download for your WordPress blog, and it helps with all of the SEO 101 stuff that you need to implement on your blog post, like your title, your meta description, your OG images, helps with generating sitemaps. It helps if you're paying for the premium, if you're rich and you're paying for the premium version. It helps with redirects and all the other good stuff. Very useful plugin, very widely used. I think it's the most used SEO plugin, right? No, maybe.
I feel like that
It
could
is.
be a good
It's
stat.
Yoast market share is about 48% right now.
Right.
That's all SEO plugins in the world. 48% most installed plugin. So yeah,
Right.
big deal.
All in one is the other big one, but we're talking about Yoast today. That's my answer.
Perfect. And you mentioned like SEO 101. Does it have any advanced features? We're going to dive into all sorts of Yoast features throughout the webinar, but is it more than just basic features?
Right. No, there's definitely like in the premium version, it lets you have more.
We're going to get into all that.
Right. But it's like it gives you like more focused keywords. It helps you with some on-page stuff. And just like there's a lot in there, but it focuses the main focus is to help your website with SEO.
Gotcha. And Casey Arsen was just starting to talk about the premium version. Is it really worth signing up for the premium, the paid version of Yoast SEO, or can an average blogger get away with just using the regular plugin? What do you recommend bloggers use?
Well, the average blogger can absolutely get away with using the regular plugin, but to get all the enhanced functionality of Yoast Premium, you're literally going to have to install 4 plugins. You have to install Yoast Premium. You have to install a Link Whisper plugin for internal linking. You've got to install redirection for redirects. You've got to install a language analysis plugin or a content analysis plugin for the semantic relay word keyword interlinking that they provide. The benefits of Yoast, I think a lot of people are confused by this, but they're quite a bit. It's not just got an orphan content filter and a redirect manager. You've got the redirect manager, which is a really good way of preventing you from making your own mistakes. You know, I don't know how many times bloggers have emailed me and says, yeah, I'd accidentally changed the URL and Yoast recognized it and told me that you really want to do this. And oh, by the way, if you are, we're going to do an automatic redirect for you to prevent you from causing yourself harm. There's also the orphan content filter, which is, again, very simple, but it's a very valuable tool. It allows you to see what content on your site you have not linked to regularly. You know, we want to make sure that we get more deep links to content as much as possible. We also have the internal linking suggestions, which are very good. So based upon how you're writing, Yoast will provide internal linking suggestions on a semantic level, tell you where you need to link to, when you need to link to. It'll even provide really cool related synonym and semantic level analysis. So you can put in a focus keyword, you can see related focus keywords to sprinkle in. And if you go back to some of our previous webinars, when we talk about, writing for the user and semantic analysis, we want to talk about writing a post that has a lot of entities in that post. And so Yoast is really good about recognizing related entities and semantic natures, giving those suggestions so that we can pop that into the comment. Now, one of the other really cool things about Yoast Premium that a lot of people don't realize is they put their own internal blocks in there. They call them Yoast internal linking blocks, and I'll provide a post on that in a minute. But there's everything in there, from the ability to do a table of contents, to using FAQs, to doing internal links, to doing custom blocks. So for a block editor, a lot of the increased linking blocks are something that the average blogger, especially on the call, could immediately find useful. Let me go ahead and paste over some information on that in the chat right here. Yoast block options right there. And a final benefit of Yoast Premium, and this has a social preview setting. You'd think that that's not a big deal, but I can't tell you how many bloggers have told me that they wish that they had the ability to actually see how their content is going to appear on Facebook and Twitter before they actually publish a post, built in right there on the same screen. You can optimize your content individually with open graph tags. You can go ahead and put in a custom title and description for the Facebook post that's ought to be auto-generated if you've got it set up with Yoast. Just little simple things like that. Just what I've described there is 4 plugins, and you can get all of those for free if you just get Yoast Premium. Now, one of the things to be aware of with Yoast Premium is that you also get actual support. I know many of you understand that not a lot of plugins provide support, and Yoast tends to have more problems than most because they tend to push out a lot of features. But those features are usually pretty robust and they fix the problems pretty quickly. But a lot of the issues with Yoast, and I know Andrew's shaking his head, there's compatibility issues. And Yoast has a lot of compatibility issues because they tend to push out, they're the tip of the spear with regards to that stuff. They push out a lot of stuff that then it takes weeks for the other plugins to catch up because they should have been doing it 3 update cycles ago. So when Yoast push out those changes, at least now you have an actual subscription channel, you have actual support, so they get back to you in minutes, not weeks or days. So in that regard, you have to weigh the pros and cons of it. If I have a blog, I would probably use Yoast Premium just because it's the simplest way for me to avoid installing 4 or 5 other needed plugins at one time.
And Andrew, Casey just covered a lot of the features of the Yoast Premium, but what are just the general recommended features that you would recommend a blogger use when they're using Yoast, the Yoast SEO plugin? And are there any features of Yoast SEO that you wouldn't recommend bloggers touch on?
So right out of the box, like you install Yoast, most of the features that are enabled by default are great. So like you literally install it and you don't even go through their help wizard. They have a setup wizard that you can go through, but even if you don't do that, just they turn on a bunch of features automatically that behind the scenes really help your site. So they add things like organizational schema. You might have to add your site name and your logo, but it puts that into the code. And so it makes your site much more readable for Google and other search engines. So some of the features though I really like are the sitemaps. Those are turned on by default as well. So it gives you the XML sitemap right away. Their structure is really good. You just add that then to your Google Search Console and Google can crawl that and find all of your content. And that integrates beautifully with, like, if you don't want to index something, it automatically takes it out of the sitemap. Like we often see clients who will install a separate sitemap plugin and Yoast, and they're using the other plugin and they make something no index, but the other sitemap plugin doesn't know. So like you need a unified platform that's aware of certain things going on. So sitemaps is definitely one. Breadcrumbs is really important. If you're using a theme that's compatible, it'll just automatically switch on, like Genesis. Other themes, you might have to add a little bit of code to put it in there, but because Yoast is one of the largest plugins, many themes are already compatible with their breadcrumbs. And that the breadcrumbs display on the front end for your visitors, but also in the schema for Google or search engines. It also has a tool on the post editor to just overwrite and edit the post title and meta description. So it gives you a little editor box. And so that makes it really easy to tweak your title and description. And then Casey mentioned social media sharing previews. Even on the free version, you may not get the full preview, but you can specify images. So you can set a Facebook optimized image and a Twitter optimized image. Like for Facebook, you want it to be, what is it, 1200 by 628, I think. So that's the rectangular, whereas Twitter's a slightly different shape. So if you're really going to fully optimize for social media, which isn't SEO, it's kind of a weird overlap, but you can set up slightly different images there. But even if you don't specify those images, it's still going to put it in the open graph tags, the OG tags, so that Facebook will see your featured image as the image there. So I think those are the biggest features I like, particularly that it's out of the box, it just works. Oh, another really good one right out of the box is by default, when you upload an image to your media library, WordPress creates a page for that image. It's really kind of silly. So there will be a URL that's associated with that image that will display your image in the middle of a page with like your sidebar and your header and stuff, which ultimately is thin content. If you're a photography website where you're like selling stock photography, that might be kind of cool. But for what we're doing with food blogs in particular, or really any blogging platform, you don't really need all that extra content. So right out of the box, Yoast will basically take that URL and redirect it to the parent post. So if you've embedded an image, instead of having all that extra stuff, it'll actually get the visitor to the right thing, and it won't include that stuff in the sitemap. I just saw a site, I searched Google a couple of minutes before, and I searched their site name in chicken, I think, because I wanted to get something to come up, and they had a post with chicken, and right below it, they had a link to one of those image pages. And it's like, no, that's thin content. We don't want to be showing that to visitors. It's not useful. So that's a really great, powerful feature that comes built in. In terms of things to ignore, I'll say traffic lights, but I think we're probably going to talk about that in a few minutes. So I think I'll pause there, and I think we can talk about that in some of the other answers.
Perfect pause. Perfect pause. Arsen, we're going to be talking about Yoast's green light, which is the light that Andrew just referred to. But what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen bloggers do when using the actual plugin?
Right. So over optimizing, I think, would be the biggest one, and that's chasing that green light. Right. It's and Yoast on their site published, and I'll share the link in a second, but Yoast published an article about how to just like make sure that you're not chasing that green light or cheating that green light, right? Cheating to get that green light. A lot of optimization. So you got to keep in mind. So Yoast approaches that green light from analyzing the content that you're putting out there, right? There's no real like SEO thought process. It's just like, we're not seeing enough of the repetition of this keyword here, 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 and here, right? And you have to keep in mind that you can easily over optimize for some queries, and then for other queries you can under optimize. And you really have to take that green light with a grain of salt. I mean, certain things within that green light. So like internal linking, I would say like image. I have a list here. Like, so like image alt attributes. You definitely want to make sure that like you're getting a green light on that, right? Key phrase and title. You definitely want to make sure that your top level keyword is within the title, right? Internal links, but like when you're looking at like outbound links, like you don't necessarily need to link out. It's not going to harm your SEO if you don't have an outbound link on that page. If it makes sense to link out, definitely link out. But just to link out just for the sake of chasing the green light really doesn't make sense. Also, when you're putting in, and with the free version, you have one focus keyword, and you're putting that in, and then the example they give is like baby clothes versus infant clothes, right? Very similar keywords, but if you're writing a piece of content and your top level keyword is your focus keyword is baby clothes, but your content contains infant clothes, those are very similar terms for Google, right? So rewriting your content to be more focused towards that focus keyword might actually not be such a good idea. So we always tell our bloggers to kind of take it with a grain of salt. You want to look into it. You don't want to just blindly, oh, I have a green light, that means it's good to go. Not true. And a lot of if you remember back to November of 2019, that update from Google, it was very heavily centered around over optimization. And a lot of the recovery work that we did since then for blogs that were affected was just cutting down on the over optimization. So definitely don't chase that green light. I think that would be the biggest recommendation for this, Yoast plugin.
Andrew, is there ever a time where it makes sense to pay attention to Yoast Greenlight? I mean, Arsen just clarified that some really big points with over optimization when bloggers just only pay attention to trying to get all greens. But is there a time where it makes sense to where you should put effort to making sure that you're getting those green lights?
Oh, I don't know if it's so much about getting the green light, but I think the tool overall, where it shows you the various things that you can optimize, I think it's a really good training tool. Especially if you're just starting out in SEO, this is a guidepost or a map, right, of where you want to put your keywords and make sure you're checking those boxes. So I think especially if you're just starting out, it's a good way to get a feel for what you want to be putting in where, as long as you don't take it too literally and over optimize. That's the biggest problem, right? Because you still, I think the big problem with this is that this is encouraging you to write for a search engine when you should be writing for a human. And, I'm a broken record on that. It's optimized for your readers. So if you look at it as a tool and a way to help you remember, hey, let's do a quick gut check. Did I get my keyword in the post title? Then that's really helpful, right? But if you take it like super rigid, you're just going to actually end up making it worse because you're going to be too robotic and Google's going to see right through it, basically.
Got it. So don't use a bot to please a bot when you need to please the users, essentially. Arsen, Yoast is against pagination, but clearly you guys are not. So why is there a disconnect and what do you actually recommend?
Right. So who submitted that question? I searched, I wanted to see if there's I was surprised. I searched around to see where did they see that Yoast is against pagination. They actually talk about how people are improperly handling their pagination by and they see this a lot with recipe bloggers. I don't know if there's a course or somebody, some consultant that's telling people to do this, but canonicalizing your sequence pages to the first page is not the proper way of handling pagination. That's the quickest way to get Google to stop trusting your canonical signals, because those canonicals are recommendations, they're not directives. So I don't see anything on Yoast's site that talks about that pagination is bad, but you definitely want Google to crawl through your taxonomies, especially your categories, not so much those tags. You want Google to crawl through those categories because Google will then see how much content you have on that particular topic. And like Andrew said, I'm a broken record on this. The more content you show Google, so here is my potato soup category. And inside this, I don't have the background anymore. Here's my potato soup category. And inside this potato soup category are all the different potato soups that I have. So if somebody searches for potato soups or different types of potato soups, or somebody just put potato soup recipes, plural, and then Google wises up and starts understanding the plural and saying, I'm going to show you a page that has all kinds of potato soups. It's going to look at a site that actually has the depth of information, or the topical depth, or we call it content depth, or what's the word, Casey? What's the fancy word to use? Topical
dilution,
or whatever.
Topical cannibalization, topical dilution,
something.
Topical ballroom dancing.
If you show Google I have enough information on this topic, Google will consider you to be authority on that topic.
Topical authority.
Right, topical authority. There you go. So getting Google to crawl through those sequence pages, page 1, page 2, page 3, you have 10 excerpts to posts on the topic of potato soup per page, and you have 5 pages of pagination. That's 50 posts, that's 50 recipes. That's a wealth of information, right? So you want Google to crawl through them. You don't want to no index those pages.
Right.
Google understands that these are pages in a sequence because Google stopped looking at that rel next, rel previous, the next previous buttons. Google doesn't, they said they don't do that anymore, but they still evaluate each page as an individual page. But those number sequences, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tells Google that these are pages in the sequence. You don't have to worry about having unique titles or unique meta descriptions or unique H1s on those. Google understands. John Mueller came out and said, we understand that these are paginated, these are pages in a sequence, so you don't need to make them unique from a title and H1 perspective. But we definitely want Google to crawl through that. So absolutely, especially for publishers like you, this is a very important thing. And it's a big part of your information architecture strategy also.
So the confusion is, the reason this question came up to be for Arson and for everyone else is because if you go in, when we're talking about pagination, we're talking about comment pagination. And so if you were to go under discussion settings in Yoast and go ahead and set your comment pagination at 10, 15, 20, whatever, which is not only a recommended practice by Google, but also something in real life we have done successfully on literally thousands of sites, you will immediately pop up a warning from Yoast that says, hold on, why are you paginating your comments? Out of 99 out of 100 times, you don't need to do this.
Right.
This is where we're confused because this is a complete disconnect with both realities and best practice. So when we're talking about pagination, everything you said was great, but the question is really talking about that situation there with comments. Right. So as Arson, as Andrew and I would both tell you on the call, absolutely ignore that. We have tried to put notes to Jono and everyone else at Yoast about this.
Right.
No idea why they've dug in, but it's completely incorrect SEO advice, period. You always want to paginate your pages because number one, Google wants you to do that. Number two, it's going to allow an incredibly decrease in regular DOM nodes and an increase in bottom line page speed, both with regards to core web vitals and every other metric you could possibly think of. So definitely paginate, definitely ignore the warning from Yoast. This is one of the clear examples where they're ridiculously incorrect, and pagination has profound benefits bloggers should be leveraging whenever possible.
Am I saying pagination weird, or is Casey saying it weird? Is it pagination?
Pagination, pagination,
I
whatever you want
honestly
to
don't know. It's one of those
Andrew?
like mini SEO terms that like you
I
just read 1,000
always go with
times.
pagination.
I
always go with pagination.
Paginate.
Yeah,
Paginate.
He's also,
paginate.
but Andrew's also a GIF guy, so we can't take anything that he says at face value. So again,
Am I? I don't even remember anymore.
I know. I just remember as well. It's on tape. So again, in the story.
I choosy Casey.
So we're going to go with GIF and pagination.
You know, Yoast hooks into the site health tool that's built into WordPress now. And if you've got comment pagination turned on, it actually says, hey, you've done this. It's not needed in 999 out of 1,000.
Out of 1,000 cases, yeah.
They made up some
99 out of
bizarre,
100. It's complete and utter hogwash. It's bullshit. So
we need to reach back out to them. Actually, I started an issue last year,
and they ignored it.
Yeah, no, Jono actually replied, but then it kind of fell off the radar.
But no, Don, your question is, if you don't have pagination or pagination set up, you should consider that, especially if you have as the default. It's something I set up as a default when we go into site audits. Usually set it up at 20, and then there's another little box below. Make sure you show your newest comments first. That's usually what we want to have showing on a page. We don't want your oldest comments to show first. We want the newest comments to show first. That's better for users. So set up your pagination at 20 or so, and then make sure that the newest comments show first. And that's just a common best practice. I know there's some people on the call who like to lazy load their comments. You can do that, but John Mueller and Google came out and said that if you have any sort of a lazy loading module displayed, whereas you or the user is required to hit a button to load the comments, that's a no-go because Googlebot can't press a button. So you've lost the ability to crawl all those comments. So you really need to think about that. We want our comments to show, and the easiest and fastest way to do that, don't lazy load your comments. Don't use a load more button. Just paginate your comments and move on.
And Casey, so Yoast clearly can help you organize the structure of not just your site, but your comments as well. But when it comes to your content, aside from optimizing, chasing the green light and all of that, Yoast has the ability to no index your content, right?
Correct.
So how does that work, and when should you be no indexing, and how can you use that within the plugin?
So it's just simple series of steps. And I'm going to go ahead and paste in a URL with a tutorial there, but it's really simple. You could no index a post and page. You do that from the post and page level. So you would get on your poster page, you would scroll down to the Yoast SEO box, and you would look at you're going to look for the advanced tab in the content. It's going to be an advanced tab right in below the Yoast SEO box. You're going to click on that. It's going to expand. And it's going to say where it says allow search engines to show this post in the search results, the default is yes. And that's the site-wide default. You would then choose no, and then we would click update. And by doing that, we would provide a no index signal so that Google could drop the page from the search results. Really easy to do.
Okay.
No reason to touch any other settings. You know, there's another setting below that about should you allow Google to crawl the links? Yes, absolutely. There's no real reason to change any of that nonsense unless for very finite cases that we don't need to get into. But yeah, just clicking the no, don't allow is all you need to do to no index a poster page.
Okay, seems easy enough. Arsen, how do canonical tags work using Yoast? Is it as easy as the no indexing? And
No, I think I'm frozen. No, I'm not frozen. Am I frozen?
No, let's go back
Yeah.
before that. Let's go back because I know we missed a question there, Ashley. Let's talk about the reasons to no index content. Very important, because when we talk about no indexing something, we want to make sure that after we've no indexing is fantastic. We want to do that, but there's some really finite reasons when we'd want to no index a piece of content. And the reasons we want to no index something is if it's a low quality or thin taxonomy. So many of you know what tags are, and many of you know what author archives are. We do not tend to want to have those indexed in Google because they generate, in many cases, hundreds, if not thousands of low quality or thin content pages. So we no index those. And you can do that directly within the Yoast plugin up under taxonomies. But other reasons that you'd want to go into individual posts and pages to no index something would be if you're using something for an offline marketing campaign, or maybe you had a thank you page on your site, or maybe you had, hey, thanks for making this purchase, or here's an email sign up form. We want to no index all of those on your site whenever we can. Other options that we'd want to no index would be something on your site that might be killing it in Pinterest or some non-Google channel, but no matter what we do, we can't get the thing to do much in Google. So maybe we just no index that on our site so that we keep access to the content, but it doesn't count against us algorithmically. We would also want to no index off topic or personal content whenever we can. So we see a lot of that on blogs. So we've got a lot of bloggers with older content. Maybe they did meal plans that they don't do anymore. Maybe they do a Fashion Friday or a Sunday link up that they don't do anymore. We no index that, possibly even delete that if it doesn't jive with what we're currently publishing. But we really want to use the no index as a way to pull the weeds out of our garden, out of our content garden. And we talked about this problem in detail in some of our previous webinars, but you really want to be judicious about your use of no index. You know, when you're no indexing something, you're basically telling Google to ignore it algorithmically. You can still keep it on the site, and that's fine so that you can provide access to other people. But if you've got a lot of off topic or low quality content, or maybe personal content that you know is not generating any positive metrics for you, understand that Google crawls and grades your site on an individual basis, but they penalize at the host level. So it's important that we make sure that every post on your site is as high quality as possible. And that's really where a good application of no index can be very beneficial for you.
gotcha. So fully covered no index.
Yeah.
Moving on to canonical tags. How do they work inside of Yoast, Arsen?
Arsen what? Arsen what?
Arsen Potato Superbinovich.
Right. Thank you. That's Dr. Potato Superbinovich to you.
No, that's too much.
That is
I was talking like what? The canonical question? Is that what you want me to answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So here,
Well done.
Arsen, how do canonical tags work in Yoast? Good question, Ashley.
Thank you. You guys don't even need me.
Don't even need me.
I got it. Okay, so canonical tags. Canonical tag is essentially telling Google that the same piece of content lives at a different address. So here's the original address for that piece of content. Canonical tags can be used inside of your website, and it can be cross-domain. So if I steal a potato soup recipe from Andrew's website and I want to publish it on my site, and I'm a nice guy, I'm going to put the canonical telling Google that, hey, I grabbed this from Andrew's website, right? Canonical, again, is only a suggestion, a recommendation. It's not a directive like no index or no follow, right? And Google will look at it and be like, do I want to? A lot of confusing signals will tell Google to stop trusting your canonicals, because Google will crawl through your website and be like, I think I know better what's happening here than the actual webmaster. and I'm not going to follow these canonical rules because they don't make sense. We also, during a lot of our audits, we see canonicals being used improperly. And then when we start looking into what's the result from that, and we start seeing pages that actually should not be in Google's index making their way in there because Google's like, this is confusing, this doesn't make sense, I'm going to grab it anyways, right? So you definitely want to make sure that all of your posts are self-referencing canonical, right? So the canonical always points to the URL. A lot of confusion can happen with internal linking and canonical pages if you frequently link. So like example, the easiest example would be a trailing slash, right? So if your site's not set up to redirect from the trailing slash to the non-trailing slash or vice versa, whichever one is dominant, and you're constantly internally linking to a URL that doesn't have a trailing slash while it has a canonical to a trailing slash, that could be a confusing signal for Google, and Google will be like, I'm going to start just ignoring this now. So that's my quick explanation of what canonicals are and how to use them. You probably should not be worried about them unless you're noticing something weird, right, Casey? Like, there's no real need for you to constantly be like concerned about like, hey, am I canonicalizing properly? Other than like the pagination issue.
No, Yoast does a very good job of generating
Right.
self-facing canonicals site-wide. So the only time that you should be worrying about canonicals is if you are going to use the cross-domain canonical function in Yoast, which Yoast does very well.
Right.
Maybe you've decided to take some of your recipes and republish them on another site you own. You could use the cross-domain canonical option there to either give the juice to your new site or keep that juice on the republished post back to your own site.
Did you really just juice?
Yeah, I'm gonna use juice today. Every time everyone says juice, you have to take a drink, but I'm out of vodka lemonade, so that's tough. So good.
I do have a t-shirt idea now, but
vodka lemonade juice. Squeeze that juice. Let's do it.
And moving on. No good transition there, but Casey, you and I have talked a ton about updating content, the ways to do it, when to not do it. You and I've talked a ton about that. But when it comes to making updates to your content in Yoast and in the backend of WordPress, you have the option to change the date. When is it appropriate to actually change the date when you've updated a piece of content, and when should you leave the date as it was?
Well, I'm a big believer in that you should show published and last modified dates on everything, period. I think it's good for users. I think it's good for Google. Google News has a citation on it, period. I think that that's what you should be doing. Published, last modified dates, done. More information is always better for the users. That's a good thing. Now, if you're going to be updating a post and making dramatic changes, just go in, make the changes, click update, no problem. So if you're going to go in, change some photos, change some paragraphs, you're making the post improve, you've improved the post. I'm all about just going in, making those changes within the editor, clicking update, showing the last updated date. Now, if you've made a substantial amount of changes on that post, maybe you've rewritten a lot of it. Maybe you've added new photos, you've uploaded new photos at recommended 1200 pixel max width. Maybe you've added a table of contents or jump links. Maybe you've gone in and implemented quite a bit more information. You can also include a little citation in the post itself, maybe below the first featured image or above the recipe card, or below the recipe card actually, saying I've updated this post and made dramatic changes. I've done this and this, but we'd still have, you still have the original publish date on it. And now we have the most recent updated date. Both of those show on the page. The only time you'd really ever need to republish a post or change it to where the date is new and therefore there is the last modified and the published dates would be the same, would be honestly if you're doing a complete rewrite. You're literally tearing everything out of the post, you're keeping the URL and you're putting some new content there, or even just writing a completely new post. No problem with that. Anyone who thinks that you can't do that is a complete and utter idiot. It's garbage advice. So here we've got Google who's come out and said it's all about quality. What they don't want to see is someone going in and clicking update on a post and not making any changes. But anyone who would say that it's dishonest or it's anti-SEO or that you shouldn't be doing something like that or republishing at a new date doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. That's not how SEO works. We're presenting a completely new piece of content We want that to show maybe on our homepage. We want that to go out to our complete RSS and subscriber feeds. Totally okay. Fine. Do that. Don't listen to some of this garbage advice that you're hearing out there, mostly from ad companies telling you that, oh, you don't want to do this because boogeyman will get you. Yeah. The only boogeyman that exists out there is your ad company. So really start thinking about, smarter, not harder. For most of you on the call, if you're going to do an update, just do an update in the post, make it better, click update, and go to bed happy. Mm-hmm. If you want to do a full rewrite, there's no reason to do a completely new post and redirect the old post to the new one. Just gut the existing post, make all your changes. And if you really want to republish this and have it go out anew, do that. Google doesn't care. They care about the quality of the content. They don't care about anything else. End of story. So hopefully that clarifies some of the misconceptions you've been hearing, and there have been a lot of them.
Yeah, definitely. While we're talking about content, Yoast suggests a minimum of 300 words. Ersin, is that an optimal length for a piece of content for a page, or is that one of those helpful Yoast suggestions, but you don't actually need to follow?
I think that 300, well, it depends. But I think I think the 300 is kind of just like the old world rule of thumb when it comes to SEO, right, Casey? Like back in the day was like, you got to make sure your post is 350 words or more, right?
I think that comes out to way back in the early 2000s. There was a very initial SEO guide that was put out, and that's really where this 300 word thing caught on. And then the next thing you know, it was in every journal after that, and people thought that was a minimum. And we know that Google doesn't have a word count. They don't. Word count's not a ranking factor. There's no such thing as a minimum word count. But for some reason, people still latch onto this 300 thing when it's just an arbitrary number that someone chose years ago and people went with.
Right. So when we do content audits through topic content, a post has to meet a certain criteria for us to consider it for either removal or improvement. One of the criteria is the length of a post, but it's never going to be based just off of the total word count of that post. So if we get a post that's under 300 words, and I think sometimes we even set the filter to be 250 words, but if it's under a certain amount of words in the piece of content, and the piece of content doesn't satisfy secondary criteria like ranking for certain keywords, time on page, does it satisfy query intent, primary, secondary intent, then we will recommend that post for improvements or removal, right? But there's definitely content, especially very frequently, we're seeing this for some of the larger bloggers. So like the bloggers who, the publishers rather, the recipe publishers who are a little bit more authoritative, perceived authority, right? Authoritative, have been doing this longer. They can definitely get away with shorter pieces of content as long as they get to the point and they again satisfy that query syntax, what the person is searching for, and the primary, secondary intent. I mean, you look at all recipes; their posts are very thin, right?
In most cases, they even lack
the
simplest of notes.
Right. So and they're still ranking. So yeah, you should definitely not like go all out. The other thing that I always recommend, especially when we do these quick consultations, is look at what's Google preferencing on page 1. Is it longer content or is it shorter form? Because if Google is assuming that the person who's looking for this information is only there to quickly get in, get out, it's going to be counterproductive to them to present them with 1,000 words of content. And I think the example that I frequently use is temperature to grill tomahawk steak. I don't need to read a whole like 3 to 6 paragraphs on this. I just need to know what the temperature is. And out of that, a few years back, that's where featured snippets came out of. Google's like, here, I'm going to give you the answer. You don't need to search for it, right? So 300 word should be kind of, again, taken with a grain of salt. If page 1 is filled with short form content that answers a query quickly and to the point, 300 words is still a lot of words, right? If you can answer it, and that's what Google's preferencing as far as the content type for page 1, then definitely don't be scared. If you're looking at word count as a way to grade your content, it needs to not only be based on word count, it has to satisfy secondary criteria. But generally, you definitely want to keep it over 300 words.
Now, I just very quickly wanted to talk a little bit about an AI tool that not Google, but AdThrive has been pushing now for a while. It's called Topic.
Right.
AdThrive bought Topic, and they've been pushing this tool out to all of its subscribers as just your 100% guaranteed way for you to get over that hump in Google to reclaim top spots. I want you guys all to really understand that one of the biggest focuses of that Topic tool is word count. Okay, they're literally going in and it's using AI technology to say, okay, well, the top 10 results have this many words. The top 3 have this many words. And you're down here on page 7. So we just need to add 300 words of content to your post and optimize it this way. And you're going to be able to get these miraculous improvements. I just want you guys to know that that is complete and utter hogwash. And I'm going to give you an example of it today where we had a big blogger go in and test out the Topic tool repeatedly. And if it was a small query or something that they were going to do well on anyway, it worked out fine. It's just like any other tool. It allows you to, it analyzes what's going on the page and tells you, okay, I see similarities and we're going to go ahead and pull out those similarities and put them in your post and you should be okay. The problem occurs when you're a big blogger and you're trying to get those small movements between 1 and 3. The tool actually told a number 1 blogger, if they were number 2 for a keyword that had 200,000 searches a month, to literally rewrite their entire post to beat the number 1 person. The number 1 was all recipes. Okay. Let me tell you, you're not going to beat all recipes on a query when there's 6,000 links pointing into that query. And in this case, she only had 10% of those. Okay. And number 1, you never touch a top 3 post anyway. So please, for the love of God, use your common sense. Do not rely on a magic tool, or someone coming to you selling some magic beans like your ad company, that this tool is going to solve these problems. If you're already ranking in the top 3 or the number 1 page, all you're going to do is be asking me for an audit in 6 months. And I don't want that to happen. Really, I don't want your business. I don't want your business. I want you to not make the mistakes here. Rely on a tool. You should not be touching. You don't touch recipe posts that are in the top 3, period. I'm sorry, especially one with 6 figures of possible referral traffic for you every month. You do not do that. And any tool that would tell you to touch that is a tool that you need to second guess. Okay.
Right. So a lot of these tools are they sell them as artificial intelligence, and they're going to do all the thinking for you. They're not. It's a correlative analysis of what's happening on page 1. There's other tools. Do you remember Quora, which was like the first one in line? And that was just like a mess. They're like, we're going to look at top 100 positions. We're going to tell you what everybody's doing. They're like, you got to add 64 images to this post.
Yeah.
No.
Rank IQ operates on the same way. Rank IQ runs an algorithm based upon topic analysis that is great for a specific range of queries. That's where we get into the long tails. If you're able to use a topic tool, you can use a topic tool successfully on longer tail queries. But on these big head queries, as we call them, sorry, no, you're not going to get to number 1 for stewed tomatoes using a tool like this. It's not. You're going to over optimize. It doesn't at all address offsite factors. There's only so much we can do on page, and we're seeing this a lot with the bigger bloggers. I've had audits recently with some of the biggest bloggers in the world. I don't need to name drop them. Some of them might be on the call. They know who they are, and they've told me the same thing. It is incredibly hard now, this year specifically, for us to make on-page changes to improve a recipe and have us receive any upward velocity or trajectory at all. They're not moving. The posts are not moving, and that's a trend that we're seeing over the last basically 9 to 12 months, where there's a lot of these offsite factors are really what we're going to need to focus in to get these really competitive head terms to move. We just can't play around with titles and H1s and keyword count and word count on a page anymore and make noticeable gains if you're already on the first page. It's just not how it works anymore. Things have been much harder. There's much more competition now.
I think we should introduce, we frequently use it depends. I think we should also now introduce correlation is not causation.
Well, I mean, that's coming out on a shirt, but that's been the case for a while. I know that Lana it's mentioned, she's on the call, she's using an AI engine called Phrase. Same thing. Phrase is literally like Topic, very similar.
Right.
And it's going to have the same fallbacks and deficiencies with regards to depending upon your query, because these head terms do not behave the same as the fat part of the middle keyword spear, and those long tail keywords tell. If we could find a tool that could, adjust the algorithm based upon the keyword, great, but that's not how it works.
Switching gears just slightly, we are running out of time. So if you have a question that we haven't addressed yet, please head over to the Q&A box and drop that in. There's a couple questions I want to get to that you guys submitted before we wrap up and go into Q&A. Andrew, earlier, Casey talked about the difference between Yoast Free versus Yoast Premium. If you end up downgrading, say you have Yoast Premium and something happens, you either don't use all the features or you need to cut budget somewhere, so you downgrade your Yoast account. What happens to all the redirects in the Yoast Redirect Manager? Do you just lose all of that, or?
No, they're in a database, but you can't.
No, they're still there. They're still there, but
yeah,
it won't,
you got to export them out, right, Andrew?
Yeah,
so you got to export them out.
Yeah, so what you want to do is it'll just basically stop doing it, but the data is still there. So before you downgrade, you want to export that list, and then I'd recommend the redirection plugin. It's literally called redirection. It's a great plugin, and you can actually import the redirects into that one. I actually prefer the redirection plugin personally, so I would even if I'm running Yoast Premium, I would probably install redirection. That's not necessary, but that way you don't ever have that problem. But either way, it works fine. What you don't want to do is have redirects in multiple places, because that can get really confusing. We see that all the time where someone has like 40 redirects set up in Yoast tool, and then 150 redirects in the redirection plugin, then they've got some server rules. So it's nice to have them all in one place, but that's just more of an organizational thing, so you can keep things running well. But yeah, just make sure you export them before you downgrade, and then import them into redirection.
Okay, perfect. And then it'll be a smoother transition. Arsen, Yoast will auto-generate meta descriptions. Do they usually do that pretty well? Is it safe, especially if you're publishing a lot of content, is it safe to just trust the whatever Yoast suggests for the meta description, or should you always go in and manually change that?
So look, the answer is your meta description that you're going to uniquely write for every post will always be the best thing, right? But sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you have a very large content repository that you haven't optimized, and you just can't go in and rewrite it. So Yoast allows you to automatically generate meta descriptions based on certain criteria that you put in as formulas into that little field. If you're a larger blogger or you produce a lot of content, one of the things that we talk about frequently is structuring your first paragraph, your introductory text, the first few sentences, or even the first sentence of 180 to 200 characters, including spaces, to be a part of your intro paragraph, but also could be used as a meta description, so that you can then tell Yoast to auto-generate the meta description based on the first 180 characters, including spaces, right? And that typically works. You definitely don't, I'm not a fan, and other SEOs, and I've seen all kinds of recommendations. I'm not a fan of leaving empty meta description tags. I just don't like it. You're kind of telling Google, hey, put whatever you want, grab whatever little snippet from my page and use it as a meta description. As a marketer, not just as an SEO, as a marketer, that really sucks for me, because that's your ad copy on the result page, right? You want to entice that click through. And especially for you bloggers who generate income from those clicks, you want that meta description to be on point, to be to give context to what they should be expecting when they click through, and they should be enticing the user to come over to your site. You can auto-generate meta descriptions for your taxonomies, for your category pages, that's fine. But if you're really putting in the effort to craft the content, spend an extra 2 minutes writing a really nice description for your post.
Yeah. Good old marketing 101. Entice them to get over to the content.
And is it still true that you want your target keyword phrase in the meta description because Google's more likely to use it, or does it not matter anymore?
The only reason you would have your keyword in the meta description is because Google does highlight that in the search results. Right. Absolutely.
Right.
So when we talk about conversion, that's just a simple SEO 101. Absolutely.
It's not an SEO factor.
No, descriptions.
Your meta description.
Descriptions are solely there for conversion. But I mean, clearly, if I'm trying to rank for Instant Pot apple pie, I assume there's Instant Pot apple pie. If not, there should be. I'm going to have Instant Pot apple pie in my meta description. If you're looking for a fantastic, very easy to make apple pie for your holiday meal, my Instant Pot apple pie is the way to go. Make sure you slice a piece off for Casey and sit in the mouth. There you go.
And the reason, though, just to clarify, is if the keyword is in there, Google is more likely to use that as the description in the search results. Whereas if you don't have the keyword or you leave it blank, they're going to pick whatever phrase they want or the bots want, right?
The default is usually the first crawlable content on the page. So they usually just pull the first couple lines from the page and use that as your default description, which again is not great, especially for as if you have a disclaimer or something at the top of your page, which is crawlable. Many times I've seen that pulled in. But it's just simple SEO 101. Fill in your descriptions, folks. It's not that hard. Fill in your descriptions. I know Google tends to ignore a lot of those for recipe bloggers and show ingredients and other nonsense, but it's one of the few things we have control over in our minds. So just try to fill them out.
I've seen a large electronics brand mess up their meta descriptions, and every single page had the Internet Explorer 6 browser warning message as the meta description in Google.
Wrapping up with the last question before we go to Q&A, Casey, there's a ton of plugins out there, some of them similar, or at least try to be similar to what Yoast has to offer. Do you recommend any other plugins over Yoast, like Rank Math or Squirrely or any of the other plugins, or does Yoast pretty much cover it all and that should be the #1 optimization plugin that bloggers use?
For most bloggers, Yoast is fine. I think that you can definitely be successful using a Rank Math or a Squirrely, but I'm going to tell you, I have never seen the problems I've seen with sites, especially novice bloggers who think that there's going to be some out-of-the-box SEO advantage for them choosing Rank Math Squirrely over Yoast. I see it all the times in these forums, Food Blogger Central, Food Blogger Friends. Oh my God, I installed Rank Math and Squirrely and I'm having such incredible luck. Baloney. Every time that I go in and audit a site that's installed Rank Math or Squirrely, they've screwed it up. They've have schema that's incorrectly applied, or in the case of Squirrely, we've had situations where it's literally blocked the generation of the recipe schema completely. And I had a blogger who'd been running Squirrely for a year and had no idea that she didn't have any rich snippets. That's the kind of thing that we really have to be cognizant of, is that Yoast corrects a lot of these errors for you. They'll let you know, hey, don't do this, or FYI, this is not the accepted best practice. They'll actually give you some little warnings there. The rest of these plugins don't do that. And anyone who would say, Yoast or anyone who will say like, Rank Math or SEO Presser or some of these plugins are just better, that's their opinion. Totally fine. But there's a reason that Yoast is the most used SEO plugin in the world. It's easy to use. It's even, it's established. Most of the core code that's been these other plugins are built on, they built from the open repository at GitHub from Yoast. And then they added features on top of that. So do your homework, folks. If you want to use Yoast, great. If you don't want to use Yoast, please read a manual. Please read something. Please read the detailed guide on Rank Math. Please read the detailed setup guide for SEO Presser so that you understand what features not to implement, and that you understand that there is a problem with hired schemas, especially for recipe posts. We don't want to have anything on a site that's going to overwrite the recipe schema on a page. And I see that a ton with these third-party plugins.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Casey. Opening up to Q&A. If you haven't put your question in, go ahead and put it in now. We have time for just a couple of questions. The first one I want to highlight is a question from Amy. Andrew, I know you definitely have something to add to this. Casey went ahead and answered part of it. This is regarding orphan content. So Amy had an example of a post that's showing as orphan content, even though it's linked through other posts. So is this a bug in Yoast? Is this something that happens frequently? We also had several others submit questions about having the same issue with Yoast when registering for this webinar. So Andrew, could you touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think it is buggy, unfortunately. It's a scanning tool that basically scans all your content and it looks for all the links and tries to tell you, hey, this post doesn't have any inbound links, right? So it's not perfect. It is just a tool. It doesn't really matter what it says there in terms of like what the result is. So, we often get somebody saying, hey, I've got 3 posts listed in the orphan content filter. I know I'm linking to them. I am sure of it. And you can stop right there. Then you're linking, then Google will see the links, even though Yoast might not, and you're good. Now, if you're a little OCD like me and you want to clean that out, you may need to reset the system. So Yoast provides a plugin called the Yoast Test Helper. I'm going to drop a link in here. So it's another little free plugin that you have to install on your site. And once you install it, basically you go to Tools, Yoast Test. I don't know why they call it Test, but they use this for like lots of debugging stuff. But there's a little button in there that says Reset Indexables and Migrations. And you click that button and it wipes out the database that it's created to track all this stuff. And then it's going to rebuild that. There's some ways you can speed that up, but over the next week or so, it'll rebuild all that information and hopefully it will be correct at that point. But that's the best tool. And then if that doesn't work, then you want to be using Yoast Premium, so you can go use their support and send it back to them and say, hey, why isn't this working? And then they can dig it a little bit deeper. Yeah.
When in doubt, just push it back to them.
Yep.
Yeah. Next question is from Tammy. And we just touched on meta descriptions, but can any of you guys go over the Yoast suggested word count for the meta description? Should we be filling that up and really using all the words that Yoast is suggesting when it comes to meta descriptions, or what do you guys recommend, Arsen?
You can keep it. You can keep it as long as you want. Obviously, Google will cut it off. Google will not say, "Oh, this is too long. You're bad. We're going to drop your rankings." But closer the rule is closer to the closer to the left, the better, right? So like what you want to put out closer to the left. I like to keep it 160 characters, including spaces. That's my kind of like cutoff for that. But yeah, search engine result pages are constantly changing, and sometimes they want them longer, sometimes they want them. Maybe you have mobile browsers, you have desktop, you have tablets. So like, get the point across. You definitely don't like keep it too short, but get the point across quickly.
Perfect. Okay, well, that wraps up our 16th episode of SEO for Publishers. Thank you as always, panelists, and thank you for everyone who joined us from literally all over the world. It's always exciting to see you guys tuning in from everywhere. Next episode is going to be on Google Search Console. It's going to be on December 8th. So next week, we are going to send out the recap post with this video so you can replay it, as well as the Q&A, and all of the links that were in here, all the resources are going to be on there, as well as the information to sign up for the next webinar. So thank you guys again for joining. I hope everyone has a good rest of their day, morning, night, afternoon.
Have a great Thanksgiving for those of you in North America, and for the rest of you, just have a good Thursday. Okay.
Whatever you guys do on a Thursday. Right.
Bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.